Welcome. Lockdown Hobby Time, day 31. And the Hellfane is very shortly to be completed. So the beast itself is finished. Set him to one side. The crew, I did some more work on them last night, off camera. So there's not a huge amount left to do on them. And in fact, I even did some teeth and eyes. Let's see if you can actually observe them. There you go, look at that. Extra tasty. And not too weird and Quasimodo-like, which is nice. That's always the goal when painting eyes. I think maybe this one here needs a bit more white on it. It's just kind of a black blob at the moment. Let's see this guy. He's looking a little bit weird, so I can do a bit more fixing around his eyes, I think. And what about this guy? He's actually looking pretty solid. I don't think he needs anything else on the eye department. The other two a little bit. And then, did I just see a bit of hair on the miniature there that I can't see with my naked eye? Yes, there's a tiny bit on his staff. Look at that. Can't even be seen with the human eye. Where is it? I'll trust that's got it. We've got Brad and Steve in the chat there. So, going to do some more work on the crew. Maybe even get them finished tonight. If I don't finish them on this stream, then I'll definitely finish them later on. And then hopefully the whole thing, I'll be able to take pictures of it in a completed state tomorrow. Time to drop. There we go. Okay, let's get to work. This isn't going to be a hugely long stream here because, of course, it is the Andy and Rem show tonight in round about 2.5 hours' time, which is very exciting, and I've got a few things to set up for that beforehand with special guest Fohammer this week. So there'll be plenty to discuss on there, including a brand new intro video for What the Hell Is That, which is, of course, an exciting and momentous occasion for all concerned. So let's have the fine detail brush and do a little bit more on those eyeballs. Okay. So what's the problem with this guy's eyes? I think the black dots on them aren't strong enough because I've painted over to fix them when they were a bit too big. So we need to go back in with the black dot again. Very carefully, mind you, with the tiniest dot possible. Here we go. Okay, looking good. Let's see if I can do the other eyeball. It would be ideal if I could do this without having to go back and fix it again. You can never count on that with eyeballs. Unless you're some kind of superhero. This guy's going to need a bit more skin colour applying underneath the eye, because it's gone on a little bit too much. And now this guy, he needed a tiny bit of white in there, didn't he? So let's get that done. Is any of this white still wet? No. I think this bit of paper is coming towards the end of its life. Because of course it can't keep the paint wet if it's not touching the wet foam underneath. Maybe this bit's wet. Not really. So changing the paper on the palette is going to be the next step. to keep everything nice and moist. What's everyone else up to today? And is everyone going to be tuning in later for the Andy and Rem show? Which is going to be a truly wondrous occasion for all ages. Well, maybe not all ages. Okay, we want a tiny dot of white to fix this eyeball. Got to get the point as fine as possible, otherwise it's going to make a mess of it. And that's not fine enough. Okay, that's quite a splodge of white that's gone in there, so that's going to need fixing with the skin colour. But I don't mind that having to go over the same bits again and again, just to get it right. It's easier to fix the skin than it is the actual eye itself, because you can start further out on the cheek and like press it closer and closer and closer until you get to the exact spot you need. Whereas with the eye, it's more like just a dot. And if you're slightly off with your aim, then it's going to be wrong. So we've got a bit of skin correction to do on those two in a moment. In the meantime, I'm going to get a different brush and add some orange. So the sleeves on these guys are orange as well. They just need some highlights. Steve has been making Longax and booking a COVID test tomorrow. Well, hopefully that goes well for you. We don't want any of the valuable members of the wargaming community struck down by illness. Is it one of those tests where they can immediately give you an answer, or is it something they have to actually take away to a lab? I haven't looked into the actual ins and outs of the testing process, other than the fact there aren't enough of them being done. Okay, now his sleeves. I think these are the final orange parts on the miniatures. Nothing else is going to be picked out in that particular colour. He says 48 hours to 5 days results, plenty of tests available down here. Well, that's good. I know there are issues in some regions with accessing the tests. You need to mix up a bit more of this lighter orange now for the highlight. Trying to make sure it's the same colour as the one on the other parts of the clothing, maybe a bit more orange required in there. Okay. Nice little edge highlights. Got Sean in the chat. But Mortal Kombat finish then. Is it ever used in the plural sense in Mortal Kombat? Aren't you always just finishing one at a time there? Okay. Steve says, can't go back to work until I get the all clear as I still have a cough. Well, hopefully it's just a perfectly innocent cough. I would hate to be someone with a chronic coughing condition going out in public at the moment. The looks you would get, I think, would be quite terrible. Probably twice as bad if you also happen to look vaguely East Asian as well. I imagine anyone with that kind of appearance who also has a cough is probably in some kind of personal hell at the moment in various places around the world. Got Bazooka in here. Graham Rigg says, hay fever is fun at the moment. Yeah, I imagine that would be. Okay. Orange sleeves done. I'm going to be going out on another shopping adventure tomorrow, I think, which is always an experience nowadays. Okay, so that's the guy whose eyes I'm happy with. These two need a bit of work now. With a nice bit of skin colour, which is on the other side of the palette. Let's see if it's still wet. Yes, I think. A bit of moisture in there. No, actually. It has been on there for a while, though. So, when I say it's been on there for a while, it's not actually been on there that long, but this area of the paper on the wet palette is getting all wrinkly now with the dry paint on it, so it's barely touching the sponge. So, I imagine start doing everything at this end for now and try and get as much life out of this one piece of paper as possible. There's 49 more of them that came with the wet palette. I'm using the good old Citadel Dwarf Flesh in the nice hex pot. Okay, let's fix up that eyeball. I think that'll do for him. And now the big boss man, who's got a large bit of white on his face now from that attempted eyeball insertion. Yeah, there's one eye that's really wedged in there between other parts of the miniature is more difficult to get at than the other. That eye still needs a bit of attention. I think I need to find a finer point than the fine detail brush though. I need something that's just going to put an actual dot there. I need a super fine detail brush, which I don't think I have. So let's try. What about this one I was just using? Can I get that to a fine point? Not fine enough, I think. What else have we got in here? Anything with just one big bristle sticking out the end would be good. Do I use a giant dry brush on it? Because I can separate one bristle from the rest and just get a little bit of paint on the end of it. Let's see if I'd be able to get that in there. Might actually be worth an attempt, you know, because there's a huge bristle sticking out the side of this dry brush. Let's see if that's doable. Am I going to be able to get enough paint on a single bristle is the question. Let's find out. No. It's not going to happen. Too fiddly. Just going to have to make do with the fine detail brush. Bazooka says use a sharpened cocktail stick to paint fine dots. That's something I may look into in the future, but it's not so much that it's a fine dot. I'm kind of going on the outside of a dot because the black dot's already there. I'm just trying to add a tiny bit of white next to it. I'm trying to make it as small as possible. Okay, let's try again. Okay, that's a start. I need to add a little bit more black now because it's kind of hidden behind his nose. Tiny bit black, and if this messes up, I'm get back in there with the flesh colour again. That's looking alright actually. I need to fix up a tiny bit on the nose, but let's have a look. Actually helps me to hold it close up as well. It gives me a better look. Yeah, you can see there's a bit around his nose there that needs fixing. The other eye is looking fine. It's just that one. Need to get the flesh colour in there to fix that up. It gives me a much better look for holding it up to the camera than it does looking at it with the naked eye. How's that? What time is the Andean Rim show tonight? In about 2 hours, 2 hours and a quarter kind of time. Stu wants to know, am I going to keep the painting live stream going after lockdown? And that's very possible. I could do them as a once a week thing, because after lockdown, of course, everyone's going to be much more busy, probably me included. So I could just make it a once a week thing, and it would be a good replacement for 2D6 Friday, which disappeared. Am I satisfied with this eyeball? I feel like the white still isn't strong enough next to the black. So let's put a bit more in and mess it up again, and then have to keep correcting it over and over and over. Just want it to be perfect. Is that so much to ask? We're flying close to the sun here. Okay, I might actually be happy with that now. I think his eyes are both looking in the same direction. Let's see. There you go. I think I'm pretty happy with that. And who else were we correcting? Is this guy okay now? I think he's alright. Obviously, you're never going to be able to see the eye that close. With the naked eye, there's no way I can magnify it that much. So I think they're looking okay. So I'm going to call the eyes done now. Get a bit of soap on the fine detail brush. Fine detail brush is the one brush I'm always most careful with to keep the point intact. Because it's the only brush that can do that one specific job. And if there's one bristle hanging out of it, which there is now, it's going to get snipped off. Don't want any stragglers. Even if the brush gets smaller over time, that's fine, because when it gets too small I can always replace it, rather than it being unusable for its entire life because there's bristles hanging off it. Okay, what now? I think I've got some washes to do, because I added a few more metal parts. You can see the chains, or the pipes, or whatever they are, on his back. They need another Nuln Oil wash over them to darken them up. And then I've added some bronze to the weapons as well. So you can see on his staff, for instance, There you go, bronze. So that needs some, let's see, probably Agrax Earthshade on it. So Agrax Earthshade and Nuln Oil are both in the Citadel paint holder right now. Now this isn't going to be a very long episode because of course I've got to prepare for the Andean Rome show in a couple of hours. There's some pictures I need to make. What the hell is that? I need to create. I need to get all the images lined up that I'm going to be showing off. And it's such a complicated process doing a live show now. Just the old-fashioned kind of screen sharing isn't really the same as it used to be. Back when it was in Google Hangouts, it was much simpler to do everything. Okay. Nuln Oil on his silver parts. Now the current streaming system has way more potential than Google Hangouts did. It's just much more complicated to actually unlock any of that potential. The one thing it's totally missing though, all the streaming stuff nowadays, it's difficult to get any way of actually drawing on the screen, which used to be very handy, especially for doing webcam games, because one player could obviously draw where they want their pieces to move. The reason I prefer using a lighter silver and 2 coats of Nuln Oil rather than just starting off with a darker silver is because I want the difference in colour between the crevices and the raised areas to be stronger. I want there to be occasional high points in there. Same thing I do with my goblin trolls, my troll units for the goblin army. Start off with a very bright green and then do 4 or 5 Agrax Earthshade washes over it, which really darkens it up, but it does leave some very raised areas nice and bright. What am I using for my streaming? Well, I'm using, first of all, the YouTube Studio, but into that I'm using Open Broadcast software, which can do pretty much everything I want, except for a couple of notable exceptions, obviously, but it's complicated. And you have lots of different sources, as they call them. So you'll have one for the camera, one for the audio, and then every image I want to put in might require another source, or I could put them all into a slideshow. And then if I click the little eyeball next to something, then it'll make that appear in the place that I've got it prearranged to appear. But it's really bad at capturing windows. So if you've just got a web browser you want to share with people, then you have to share an entire screen rather than just capture the window itself, because that's not something that seems to work. So when I've got other people on the stream, I have to put their camera on in one corner of my screen, leave that visible, then share the entire screen, and then cover up most of it with other pictures so that you can just see that one corner in the bottom where the person's camera is supposed to be. And I've got a second monitor set up now, so that might be easier. I might be able to just use that screen for people's cameras and then just share that screen into a section of the software. We'll see if that works. Very needlessly complicated, basically. I'm pretty sure that some of the live shows do the same thing. I've been obviously during my research for getting back into this kind of thing, I was looking at who else also does multi-person live streams, including Warhammer Weekly, and it seems like, to my untrained eye, that they do the same thing where it's just a screen share in the background of the other participants' cameras. Rather than a more kind of slick method, which I imagine does exist, but it's very difficult to set up. So I'm just putting a bit of Agrax on the bronze parts of the weapons now. I was deciding what colour to do the weapons and thought there's a bit of bronze going on the beast itself. So why not carry that over onto these guys a bit? Yes, it is very complicated. I pity anyone that has no tech knowledge at all trying to get into this kind of thing. The tutorials out there aren't really clear enough, if you ask me. So it really means that I need the two webcams so I can have one of them set so that the other people in the chat that I'm talking to can actually see me, and one for the broadcast, because you can't use the same webcam for two different things. Okay, looking good, guys. Hangout seems so easy in comparison. It was very easy, but it was very limited. So it's fine if that's all you wanted it for, but if you wanted to do more complicated things, for example with what I'm using now, you can just pop up and start playing videos for the audience to see and hear. But the funny thing is that the people who I'm talking to on the show can't see or hear the videos that I'm playing, and I can't actually hear them either. So if you see me dancing to some of the music that I'm playing, then I'll either have it playing in a separate source at the same time, or I'll just be going over the tune in my head so my dancing is vaguely in time with it. Let's see, how many sources have I got set up for tonight's show? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different things that the computer is recognizing as a source for the stream. So if I click the eyeball next to them, they will appear. So let's see, for example, if I do that, that's going to pop up, make that disappear. Can move things around, obviously. But you've got to be careful. And I would not trust Mr. Remington to do any of this stuff, because you know what he's like. Even when he's just screen sharing on Google Hangouts, he's accidentally showed pictures that he probably shouldn't have done. Especially since he keeps every single picture on his computer in the same folder. I don't know if he still does that, but this is him we're talking about, so I assume that he's not changed. So I'm going to highlight the gloves and the boots and the belts now with grey. I'm not going to be doing too much else today on this because I've got things to be doing. Setting up for the show later on. So let's start with the boss and his fingers. Bit of grey, still nice and moist from yesterday. And if this comes out a bit too thick, which it can do, then just got to be even more careful and put another black line between the fingers if I make a mess of it. Let's go for the fine detail brush instead. I think this is too fiddly. Just a teeny bit thinner than that brush. In other exciting news, I've got a Kings of War game lined up tomorrow over webcam. So I'll be taking pictures of that and then turning it into a regular battle report in the traditional style. Okay, who's next? So that means there may not be a lockdown hobby time tomorrow. We'll see. There might be one, it depends, because I also have to go shopping tomorrow as well. But I do need to get the cameras set up for the Kings of War game, so it's possible that I won't be doing one of these tomorrow. Painting Basildorf finger. How did it come to this? Yeah, so the game's going to be Abyssal Dwarves versus Undead tomorrow, and hopefully the battle report can be the following day. It'll be good to get back in the battle report saddle. And hopefully the game goes smoothly so that I can do more of them. Obviously, if it's a complete nightmare trying to get it set up, then that's going to limit how often I'm going to do them. And very exciting news. I had a Patreon payment today. Yay! So I'm essentially swimming in gold coins now. All $24 worth of gold coins. I wonder how much of a gold coin $24 could buy. We'll catch you later, Bazooka, no doubt. Okay, that's the grey highlight done on all the black parts, and then there's going to be a lighter grey highlight on there as well. So I'll just finish that, which is going to be a little bit of wolf grey on the knuckles or tips of the various grey parts that I've just done. Is this paint here still wet at all? Nope. Let's get some fresh wolf grey on the wet part of the wet palette. Okay, next. And more knuckles. Very close to finishing these guys. They're going to need a little bit of a silver highlight on various parts. But outside of that, very little remaining to be done. Okay, just this guy now. So I'm going to go around and neaten everything up as well, in case there's any paint that's strayed. That shouldn't be a long process. These are only 3 little dudes. Just this hand to go. Okay. There's that part done. And I'm going to stop this video in a second. 48 minutes. And not much to do on these. I may be able to do the silver highlights tonight off camera. There's not a lot to do, and you saw how I did that on the actual main Hellfane anyway. It's exactly the same thing. Just going to be picking out the corners, the tips, and then anywhere there's a lot of fine like pattern detail, just making a kind of stripe down it to give the impression of it being shiny. And apart from that, a little bit of silver highlighting to do on the ridges on the staffs as well. See, yeah, you can see it's quite a lot of ridges on it there on the staff. Going to be picking those out. He looks a bit weird from that angle. It looks like one of his eyes is strange, but it's just shiny. You can see that it is actually black when you turn it round. And that won't be a problem when he gets a bit of matte varnish on there, so his eyeball's not shiny anymore. Get these brushes put away. Just waiting for my Vallejo paint rack to arrive, which is why the desk is still full of all these Vallejo paints, taking up half the space on it. After that, I'm going to look for some kind of Citadel paint solution as well. But there is a fair bit of space here that I wouldn't be able to put miniatures on anyway. So I can leave some of the paints out here. Okay, so let's give you a quick look at the Hellfane. Totally finished, looking nice and shiny. where it's supposed to. Nice skull on the front there. There's the back. Being very tasty, I think. So all that remains is just these guys to be finished off and then stuck on it. And that will be that. So, I think that's going to be everything. So don't forget to check out the Andy and Rem show. It's going live in probably slightly less than 2 hours. That's going to be very exciting. You don't want to miss it. You should be there, or you will in fact be square. Going to be lots of red hot sizzling segments on there, including What the Hell Is That? Nerd Confessions, some breaking GW news, some paint scandals as well, and special guest Foehammer, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And tomorrow there may not be one of these. I haven't decided yet. It depends if I get a chance, because there is going to be a Kings of War game played tomorrow, so you can look forward to that battle report. Don't forget to check out all the links, social media, shenanigans, fundraising sources down below. And I won't say goodnight because I'll be back later on, so instead I will say ta-ta for now.